I think technology is the democratizing thing of that. And that's just my belief. It could change. Something could go on. But the reason I believe in Bitcoin is because Bitcoin should accelerate into either scenario that plays out, because the growing number of people on the bottom end of the K do not feel like they're part of the system. And this is the part of the fourth turning that, if people haven't spent time, it's about losing trust. So the University of Michigan consumer sentiment, to me, has a reflection of losing trust and hope in the economy. So Bitcoin is a trustless thing. It was set up first to deal with the fact I don't trust the banks. Well, now we're past the banks. I don't trust my employer. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the banks. I don't trust the currency. I don't trust the debt. I don't trust anything. And so I don't see how you all of a sudden get the trust back. And if you read The Fourth Turning, there needs to be an event.
Macro investor Jordi Visser isn't warning about government debt the way most people do. He's pointing at something bigger. The real danger, he says, is to the $175 trillion in net worth locked up in U.S. assets. Real estate, equities, businesses, all of it could see massive value erosion once AI reshapes the landscape. Take housing as an example. If you own a $30 million mansion, its market value depends on scarcity. But if AI-driven technology and humanoid labor make it possible to replicate that same home for a fraction of the cost, scarcity disappears. The value of your home collapses, and no insurance policy can protect the old price. Visser argues this is what makes today's moment so dangerous. We're not just facing debt problems or political division. We're colliding with the fourth turning, Schumpeter's creative destruction, and the unprecedented speed of AI adoption. Consumer confidence data already shows the strain, with stress levels comparable to the Great Financial Crisis and the 2022 inflation shock. In his words, this isn't just another cycle, it's the rewriting of the entire capital structure of the world. And when that happens, Visser believes Bitcoin becomes more than an investment. It's the escape hatch, the alternative system ready to step in when the old one finally breaks down. If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that actually understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.
I think everyone, particularly macro people, should really do their homework on the fourth turning. So one thing when I would spend my time traveling to China from 2007 to 2013, I started to really study the generational differences between the people I was meeting and their parents. And so this reminded me of the difference between my grandmother, who told me never to take debt, and my mother, who's a baby boomer, and the difference. So this generational shift, I think everyone that has kids realizes their kids, in a lot of ways, fight back eventually against the parents, and they start doing things that their parents told them not to do. They do that anyway. And so this fourth turning has a generational component to it, which I believe in. And I believe in this. And in China's case, it was the Cultural Revolution and the Cultural Revolution babies. Very different mindsets. And again, at a different time. The reason I haven't spoken about it by itself is because when I've talked to you, I've talked about Jeff Booth and Joseph Schumpeter. Now, in those cases, that is how innovation is destroying everything in its path, and that eventually capitalism will cannibalize itself. And that's where Bitcoin comes out. I think what the University of Michigan, I think the violence we're seeing across the country, the war that has happened with Ukraine, Russia, and when you read through it, especially with the technology, and you take the fourth turning and say, okay, basically you come out of a massive situation like World War II and the Depression. And then this leads to kind of 80 to 100 years, getting to a point in the fourth turning where we're getting close to a rebirth. And the rebirth comes from another kind of revolution or something going on. I believe that's what's happening. And I believe we're entering what will be the worst period. And I say the worst period not from a stock market perspective, but from this belief that AI is accelerating so fast. And when I say to people, flying cars, humanoids, living forever, stuff like that, I don't think they realize how disruptive that is to things. It's only when I say, okay, all fiat assets will be worth zero. Like there's no value. And I gave a speech to a family office of wealthy individuals, all families that have large amounts of money who have nothing involved in Bitcoin. And the person wanted me to speak to them. And the last time I was at his event, I realized that, oh, you guys want to hear negative things, like this group, because they have a lot of money, so they're scared of losing it. And I just said, you guys are all worried about the debt. Everyone talks about the debt. They talk about shorting bonds. The reality is, for everyone who has money, you should be worried about your assets. There's $175 trillion of net worth in the United States of America alone. That's net. That's X the debt. So when you go through this, everyone should be worried about what AI is going to do, because what I see AI doing is the ability to replicate everything. So we already went through this with Napster. We already went through, like, we've watched all of this technology happen, but now we're getting into artificial intelligence where everything will be able to be replicated, everything. And so when people go, what about real estate? I go, okay, think of replication, but now if you have a house and it's worth $30 million and someone buys a piece of land next to it and then they put up a house and they use humanoids to put it up and all this new materials that have been created by artificial intelligence, and it costs $10 to make, what's the value of your house? If the replication is $10, well, the insurance isn't going to give you $30 million for it. All houses go down in price. So my reality in this world is that the capital structure of the world will change. And that is what effectively the fourth turning is kind of taking us into. So it's really the merging of the fourth turning in Joseph Schumpeter. And I think the University of Michigan consumer confidence, it was in the great financial crisis that it was at these levels. It was in 2022 during the inflation situation. And then it was during the worst of Liberation Day. Those are the 5 times, it's been 5 times that it was at this level or lower. And now we're there with stocks at all-time highs, rallying, corporate profits there. I think it's because of the K-shaped economy, and I think it's because people are really scared about what's happening in the future. I mean, I think we're going to kind of see an experiment of this because we're going to have a new mayor in New York City. So on one side, we're going to try and again, there is a term we use on Wall Street for when 2 charts start to divide like this. It's called alligator jaws, and they eventually close. So I do believe they're eventually going to close. So the point is, do they close with the bottom coming up and the top coming down a little bit? Or do we tax everyone up here and move it down and make everything affordable? I think this debate between the far left and the far right, they can fight it over. And I always make the joke that people will always vote for assets to go higher. If assets go down, pretty much everyone always votes this way because you lose your job and then you can't afford anything. And that's why we've avoided the Great Depression again, is because nobody wants to hear the stories and live through what our grandparents, or at least my grandparents, lived through. And I heard those stories as a kid, and it affected kind of the way I thought about things in debt because of how much of an influence she had. I actually think there's a third alternative, and that is the innovation of abundance that is still disruptive. But in that case, it just brings them both down to about the same level over time. That's why when you believe in this stuff, and I reference moonshots on here,
podcast.
They talk about it all the time. They talked about it this week. Reid Hoffman was on. And I mean, most smart AI people will, if they're really honest, will say, I don't think there'll be any jobs. Well, if there's no jobs, then there's this K-shaped economy changes dramatically. And whether or not you agree with it, I think it has to be part of your distribution of outcomes. Now, to get there could be a lot of revolts, but the masses, when you do the numbers of the economy, and this is the problem, we say K-shaped economy. Okay, well, how many people are in the K, on the bottom level of the K, and how many people on the top level? It's getting very heavy on the bottom level, especially when you do it relative to the size of this. And so I think whenever that's happened in history, there's ended up being a revolution of some sort. I think technology is the democratizing thing of that. And that's just my belief. It could change. Something could go on. But the reason I believe in Bitcoin is because Bitcoin should accelerate into either scenario that plays out, because the growing number of people on the bottom end of the K do not feel like they're part of the system. And this is the part of the fourth turning that, if people haven't spent time, it's about losing trust.
Jordi Visser sees technology as the great equalizer of our time. A generation ago, access to elite knowledge was locked behind borders, wealth, and institutions. Today, world-class tools sit in everyone's pocket. The same Google search engine a child in New York uses is also available to a child in rural Brazil. The best teachers, lectures, and ideas no longer belong only to the privileged few. This democratization of knowledge has already begun to shift the balance of opportunity. The next leap, Visser argues, will be far more disruptive. Artificial intelligence isn't just automating tasks. It's about to drive breakthroughs in energy, biology, and physics. People who could never afford top doctors will soon have AI-powered medical guidance rivaling the best specialists in the world. Expertise, once scarce, is about to scale globally. But the shift doesn't stop there. The future will be built on humans plus machines. Neuralink, humanoid robotics, and AI integration aren't science fiction. They're rolling out faster than smartphones ever did. Within 15 years, Visser believes the world will feel unrecognizable. For better or worse, the boundary between human ability and machine intelligence is dissolving, and that changes everything about how we live, work, and compete. Let's get back to the interview.
In terms of 25 versus 50, it would have been really tough to do 50, and I think even the dissents were only limited to the Trump person who was put on just recently. So I think even the Fed governors that are possibly up for Fed chair, they voted the same way. So I think people should just take this as there is a step in this direction. Labor is the focus. So I think overall for people reading through the tea leaves, there's a lot of outcry of a policy mistake. And that's because the inflation situation is still above their target. And you could make the argument that the service side is suggesting that inflation is going to go higher. The market reaction that day was very typical, meaning you get a lot of gyrations, but it's a big mistake by everyone to trade the tea leaves. You've got expiration, you've got a bunch of things going on, but I think overall, especially yesterday, the main story to take away from people is people are focused on the fact that now the Fed's out of the way, they're cutting rates, they're starting to hear kind of the statistics along the fact that the Fed cutting near all-time highs in the stock market historically is very good for stocks a year out. And so I think we're starting a mad chase. The biggest thing for me is that the sentiment going into it, number one was I heard repeatedly from hedge funds, this will be a sell the news event. So people hadn't given up on the fact that either, number one, they'd get a chance to short things, or probably implied in that was, hey, I really need an opportunity to buy things before the end of the year and I hope things fall. That didn't happen. But the other thing that people should really kind of think about is just the sentiment gauges are still in territory that is incredible to me, given the stock market sitting near the all-time highs. And I'll just leave it with one more thing from yesterday. We had the NASDAQ, the S&P, the Dow, and the Russell 2000 all make new all-time highs yesterday on the same day.
Yahtzee.
That is a very rare occurrence. In fact, I read in Bloomberg yesterday that it was only the 25th time it's happened this century. So everyone is still way too negative. The Fed is cutting rates. They're helping. And I think people just have to accept the fact that this is going to continue. They're going to cut. The person I worked for 20 years dedicated his entire fortune that he made to helping kids in urban areas that didn't have access to education. And he said something to me that over time I've used in papers, and I've asked people the question and no one ever gets it, which is, what is the number one factor that comes back for the wealth that you have? And it's the zip code you were born in. And so it makes sense when you think about it. Okay, so if people are born in a poor country and they don't have access to any information, they don't have a computer, they don't have education, they don't have the services to help them get through, they can't actually make money. Well, what we've done with, again, retail is we've given them the tool of insane intelligence. We've given them the tools of social media for free. Communication. I need an idea. Where do I find it? I can go get it. It's a very powerful thing when before you had to go to a great school with a great library to actually get access to great books and to talk to the best teachers. Well, now the best teacher is in your hand and it's only getting better. So it's already started. And remember, the Google that they use in the poorest parts of Brazil is the same Google and costs the same money as a wealthy person here. So the democratization has been happening for a period of time anyway. But the reason that it's going to accelerate is because that intelligence will then lead to solutions for energy, solutions for physics, solutions for biology. And then all of a sudden, people that can't afford to go to the best doctor, well, they're going to have the best doctor because the best doctor will be merging. And this is the part about the way the new world will work. So when I've read The Fourth Turning and I've used AI and what this world will look like, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we will be merging humans plus computers. And that may scare people, but that's the reality of what Neuralink is. That's the reality of what humanoids are. That's the reality of all this stuff. So the abundance is going to show up in that thing. And it's only 15 years from now. It's less time than when we had the smartphone. So you're not even going to feel it happen, but it is happening. And I think people just have to accept that having a billion Einsteins on the planet thinking about things, we're going to solve problems that we didn't understand. And that's why when I hear people's hatred towards Elon Musk, I'm like, the reason the guy wants to go to Mars is the sustaining of human beings. If you don't believe in someone doing that, you weren't a kid growing up liking Star Trek, liking Star Wars, which I didn't, but you still need to believe that the world is going to be very different 15 years than it is.
What's unfolding isn't just another chapter in the economic cycle. It's a structural rewrite of value itself. When machines begin to replicate what once was rare, the foundations of wealth shift. Assets that were thought untouchable, land, luxury homes, even legacy businesses, may no longer command the same premium once technology removes scarcity. That kind of change cuts deeper than debt crises or political divides because it alters the rules every portfolio, every balance sheet, and every household has been built on. At the same time, the spread of intelligence through technology is accelerating opportunity at a pace history has never seen. Knowledge, medicine, energy breakthroughs, all of it is about to scale beyond borders. The gap between privilege and access is shrinking, but with it comes the unsettling reality that old systems of value storage and wealth transfer won't hold steady. This isn't just evolution, it's acceleration, and it demands a new framework for security. That is where digital alternatives step into the frame. In moments when traditional structures falter, people seek out new anchors of trust. The idea isn't simply about price speculation, it's about resilience in the face of a shifting foundation. The open question now is whether society is prepared for a world where the cornerstone of wealth is no longer built on scarcity, but on adaptability. So stay tuned. If you're into real, data-backed takes on the financial system, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the weekly updates. Thank you for the support, and I hope you enjoy the video.